Morning.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
I'm
All
going to
right.
say that once I was listening to our podcast and I noticed that I always say I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm one away from all right, all right, all right.
All right. All right. All right.
Maybe I got to come up with a standard greeting, kind of my catchphrase.
Yeah. I find that the vast majority of the time these days, I say I'm doing great. And I remember, I don't know why it stuck with me, but I had a customer at Schomburg Supplies, very positive lady, like uber positive, really. But she would always say, I'm doing perfect. And I just like, I don't know why it rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I
It's
mean,
perfect.
I guess if you
Per
say it over and over again, but perfect. I mean, I
uh,
don't know. It sounds like you're kind of hiding something when you say
yeah,
you're doing perfect.
yeah. That's a little suspicious. It's a little boastful. So I don't
it
know about
seems
perfect.
it
But
seems
you
a
know
little
what? Great is a nice thing to say. I
bit.
for years I always did the standard. How you doing? I'm fine. I'm okay. But I
Yeah,
started saying I'm okay because I
yeah,
only feel okay.
yeah,
And I thought, well, people will take okay as okay, but people sometimes go, well, are you okay? What do you mean by okay?
yeah.
So it's a
It's
bad habit I've gotten into, looking for sympathy, I guess. But
it's
anyway.
a simple thing, really. I always used to say, I would always say, "Good, you." Like I would
Hmm.
just say, "I'm good, you." Like it would like
Yep.
immediately I'm like transferring like I'm good, you.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a deflection because I think maybe I wasn't doing that good. And so I would kind of transfer that. But
That's
today,
that's 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 what it is. And I do that. I
mhm,
know you know this. I will text you when I'm not doing good and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And
yeah,
you're like, "Well, how are you doing?"
yeah,
But
it's true.
um, but I also know I've caught myself when I'm in my bouts of, I have depression. People
Hmm.
will ask me how I'm doing.
Hmm.
Instead of saying fine, which is all I should say, I tell
Yes,
them. And
yes.
they're sitting there. And if you ask me,
Hmm.
course I should tell you how I'm doing. But if
Yeah,
it's some guy that I see once every 2 years that gives me my hamburger, like it's
right.
like, holy shit, man! Uh, I was just being
Too
polite.
much, too much information, John. Like it's good to be honest. We're taught to be honest for sure, but sometimes, yeah, it's more
Yeah,
than people can kind of handle, I guess, at times, right?
yeah,
So
it's true. He asked me
yeah,
what time it is, and I built him a watch. Like it's just a
yeah,
little too much. So,
that's a good one. As in what time it is, and I build them a watch. I mean, if you can build a watch, man, I think you need to like switch careers. Like you can move to Switzerland and become a watchmaker.
yeah,
That's kind of
big.
fun.
It's very. I didn't realize I saw a show on it not long ago. Believe it or not, and building watches is very hard to do.
It
So,
is, yeah, yeah. It's like I feel like it's like a generational thing. Like your
yeah.
grandfather did it, and then you do it, and you
Yeah,
know,
my uncle
very,
Timex used to do it. He was
very,
good.
very detail oriented individual.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
All right. So what's
Okay.
our topic this morning, good sir?
Well, we talked about it earlier in the week. We tried to prepare a little bit sooner. You had talked about hopes and dreams, and then I added goals. They kind of all fall into the same category, and I think we wanted to talk about goals that we've had in our lives. Goals that we set, how we sort of achieved them or move towards them, and then along with goals, hopes, and dreams. So I
Excellent.
can I'll read the definition of all three to
Thank you.
start us off here. So the first one, a goal. Well, it comes up as in football, soccer, rugby, hockey. It's on a pair of posts linked to the crossbar. Anyway,
Oh,
we don't need to worry about those kind of goals. The goal that we're talking about is the object of a person's ambition or effort, an aim or desired result. So that's
wow.
a good one. Yeah. Hopes, a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. That's a good one too. And then dreams. I mean, we know what dreams are, obviously, like a series of thoughts, images, and sensation occurring in a person's mind during sleep. But the other one is a cherished aspiration, ambition, or ideal. I fulfilled a childhood dream when I became a champion.
A cherished? What
A
was it?
cherished aspiration,
I like that.
ambition, or ideal. Yeah,
Cherished aspiration. I'm going to be a pain in the butt this morning. Could you read the second definition again?
absolutely.
Hope.
Hope. Hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen.
Okay.
Also, a feeling of trust is what it says. Our private friendship upon hope and affiance, whereof I presume to be your petitioner. I don't even really understand that, but
Okay.
yeah, a feeling of expectation, a desire for a certain thing to happen.
Well, that's a good definition.
It is.
I hope.
So, do you want to start us off? Do you, I think I always like to go kind of back in time and think about what kind of goals I had when I was young. I don't know.
Absolutely.
We don't always set we don't always set goals when we're young, I guess, but we have certain hopes and dreams. I think when we're younger, and
Yeah,
um,
I wrote down a couple. These are going to sound frivolous, but I kind of thought about that pattern as well about going back in the past.
mhm.
And I remembered I had two goals, hopes, and dreams as a young man for years and years.
Okay,
I wanted to be an architect
wow,
and I wanted to be a race car driver.
wow, so
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah.
so cool.
And that was not just like a passing, like, oh, I wanted to be those things. And
Hmm.
I love speed to this day.
Yeah.
I love watching race cars. I love driving fast.
Hmm.
Um, I've I I basically lost my license for driving too fast.
Did
Um,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
I fought to get it back, so I managed to not lose it, but I technically lost it.
Hmm.
Um, and we used to drag as teenagers. I had an
Yeah.
old 77 Monte Carlo, flat
Cool.
green. It
Cool.
it bounced.
Yeah.
You could take the key out of it and it would still keep running. Like it was a tank. I think
Right.
dad paid $700 and it was so fast. And my buddy had a 77 Oldsmobile four
Mhm.
screen. And we would, yeah, I shouldn't say too much. My people in my life might not know how much I did. So, but I used to just, I remember we were going three wide down a highway one time. And this guy I didn't really know, when we stopped, he goes, man, you can drive. And I said, well, it just never, I'm actually been a bit of a fraidy cat my whole life. Like I got to tell you, I am. Like I used to be scared to go in the basement. I was always scared of this, scared of that. I'm not Mr. Brave by any means, but I was
Right.
never scared of speed. I just never. On my Harley, I mean, just faster and faster and faster. That's all I cared about.
Well, I guess I mean, overcoming fears. I think it's one of those things. If you embrace it, if you have driven fast and you're good at it, let's just say, then you can overcome that fear. I mean, I like speed too. I'm not going to say I don't. And there were times where I drove a little faster than I do now. I never like, especially when I worked for Kingsdown, I, I would never be in the slow lane. Never.
No, no.
I mean, I've got places to go. I got things to do. If I'm on the highway, I'm doing 130. Like I'm not doing 180, but I'm doing 130 with most people are driving that speed. But yeah, no, I'm not one to kind of dilly dally, let's say, in the slow lane. Like that's
No,
not where you're gonna
I
find Chris
I
Brogan driving.
can't stand people driving slow. I can't stand it. I can't stand sitting in traffic. Like if
Yeah,
I have to spend 5 hours in the car, I don't have a
yeah,
problem with it. But if I'm sitting in traffic for five
yeah.
hours,
Oh
ay,
my
ay,
God.
ay.
Yeah.
I just cannot. I remember one time a friend of mine owned a Corvette, and we were going from Truro to Moncton. We weren't together. We just happened to be. He found out he was driving. He's a customer. He was driving at the same time.
Yeah.
And we got talking about. He goes, "I wish I could drive this thing. I wish I could open this up on the way home." I said, "Well, jump behind me, man," because he
Yeah.
was scared of getting a ticket. I said, "Let's go." So I have an F-150. I put it up to 160, and he drafted the whole way with
Wow.
me.
Right.
But I and I always wanted when I go across the border in the United States, first thing I do is take off the helmet. I can't. Oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hate motorcycle helmets so much. Those laws are. I hate them. I hate
They
them.
they
I
are
know.
there for a reason, we'll say, but okay, I get it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, at the speed I'm driving on a highway, I think
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld said this one time. The helmet's wearing me for protection at that point, really. You
Yes,
know,
yes,
like
it's true.
if I wipe out, the helmet's going to be, oh, thank goodness I was wearing that human. I'm okay, but
Exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
really going to help me. No,
No.
I came upon an accident years ago where a guy on a Harley it was a mess on it with a transport truck, and he was dead on arrival. I was the first one there, and that should have scared me straight, but it didn't really. But what I find the only part I fear about speed is sometimes I would come home and I would think about what was going on. I'd think about, oh man, that corner was a little,
Yeah.
or if I
Mhm.
think about what if my wheel came off or whatever. No, I
Yeah.
don't do it if there's someone else in the car. Like I won't. But anyway, and then I always wanted to be an architect. And you mentioned Lego. I still like building Lego.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
immature, I know, but I always my parents used to say, "Oh, you should." I used to design stuff. Like I always wanted to do it, but you know, my life went a different path. I was a young dad. We all know that story, so I'm not going to go
Yeah.
into it again. But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway,
It's interesting. I don't think I knew that about you, but I can't remember when I wanted to be an architect, but I also wanted to be an architect. And I do think it does have something to do with building Lego. And I built a lot of models when I was a kid. I
yes,
enjoyed doing that. Um, and I always, because we traveled a lot when I was younger, I always had a real um, interest in buildings, in old buildings, in historical buildings, and I always looked at them and thought, man, that's just so incredible that people built that. Like,
well,
especially,
you're doing yard architecture now.
I am, and that is fulfilling for me for sure. I do, I have a lot of processes that I have to go through in order to change somebody's yard, and there are aspects of architecture, fences, decks, different things like that are interesting. But it's interesting that you bring that up because early on in my sobriety, I met a guy who was in the program as well, and he was an architect. And I talked to him about it a bit, and he said, Chris, it's never too late. It would take 5 years, but you still have time. Who knows? I could be here for 30 more years. 5 years of that, it's not that much time. And ultimately, I mean, I think about it. If I were to do it, yeah, I would love to design homes. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I could start designing buildings or things, but
The good
yeah,
one.
I have a certain style of home. I like modern homes. I like cottages. It has a lot to do, I think, with the surrounding and fitting a building into a surrounding, or just like environmentally friendly buildings and things like that.
Yes.
So I don't know. It's been on my mind for a long time. It's interesting that you say it. So it is kind of a dream, I think, of mine. And I
Yeah,
feel
and
like,
I even like I haven't got the money, but even Shonda used to come home after work and wonder where the furniture was going to be. I was always trying to design inside the
yeah,
house, like
yeah,
find different ways to put things, and
yeah,
move
yeah,
things. And maybe we can, maybe we can do it together, and we can be S&C architectures in 5 years. That would
yeah,
be a
yeah.
podcast people might watch.
It would, and when as we're talking about dreams and hopes and goals, yeah, I went through them, and I don't know, at some point, and I don't know, for a while, I think I kind of blame my parents. I think when we get older, if certain things don't come true in our lives, we tend to blame our parents for not kind of, I don't know, pushing us in a
Yes.
direction. My mom always wanted me to be a lawyer. She just always said, "Oh, you should be a lawyer. I wish you were a lawyer." And I don't know why. Like, I wasn't an argumentative kid or anything like that. I don't know. I think it was just just as a mom, like she didn't want me to be a doctor, which a lot of parents I think do. But she wanted me to be a lawyer. I remember taking criminology at university. It was fun. I enjoyed it, but I think I think and going back to, like, your parents, my parents, like, they literally kind of, they gave me everything I wanted. Like, they just, if I wanted something, they gave it to me. They didn't kind of like say, well, yeah, no, if you want a car, you need to get a job, save money. They would just buy me a car. And I kind of like, I feel like it jaded me in a way that I didn't have a lot of goals when I was a kid. I kind of just I floated along, we talked about it on a previous podcast when we were talking about what were we talking about? Well, we were talking about times in our lives like when we had difficulties, highs and lows. And there was a time after high school when I went to university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have goals. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do for a career. And I mean, I think people that do know that when they're young, I think, man, that's such a gift. Like to be
Mm.
able to know what you want, go to school for it, and do it. And that is a gift. Like that's special. Like, and who knows? Over time, it can change. Of course, maybe you do. Maybe you set a goal to become a doctor, and maybe you don't love it, and then you change and you end up doing something else. I think that's probably a bad example because I think most doctors stick to being a
Well,
doctor. But
I've got a doctor who was he was a lawyer for years and then became a doctor. Like,
wow, yeah,
and they say you should change your career like 4 or 5 times to be happy in life. Like,
yeah,
I agree with that statement. I
yeah.
and you were talking about parents. Like, my parents, dad gave me everything I needed in high school,
Hmm.
but to a fault. Like, and
Yeah.
I think he did it out of he moved. We lived in the city. I loved my neighborhood. My friends lived
Hmm.
there. I was starting high school. My dad said he wanted to move to the country, and
Hmm.
that's a long story. But he told me, I won't do it until you graduate. I promise. I won't take you to the city away from your friends and all that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, 2 months later, the house was for sale, and
Right.
away we went.
Yeah.
He decided to build a house. We moved out of our house in June. We moved into this new house December 23rd. We were living like pack rats. Like, I was at my grandmother's. We were at the cottage. It was awful. We were at my uncle's. Dad just stayed away completely. He just left me and mom on our own. He was traveling.
Hmm.
But anyway, um, then I think out of almost like guilt, he knew I had to travel to town, so he gave me a car and he gave me a gas card. And my
Hmm.
friends were always like, "Oh, you're spoiled, you're spoiled." But
Yeah.
I didn't feel spoiled. It
Hmm.
felt like, I don't know. It was never spoiled. And I found my my dad and mom never really pushed me to be anything. Now, I told you last podcast, I always wanted to be like my dad.
Hmm.
But my dad gave me a job when I was 19 because my girlfriend was pregnant and I was getting married.
Hmm.
And he just basically, told me, he told me even in high school I could go work for him. My grades were okay, but I wasn't going to school. But I found out after that wasn't for me. And I'm not just saying that it wasn't for me. It was for him, like,
Hmm.
because he didn't want to work. So
Right.
after about 2 years, he started laying more and more on me and
Yeah.
came up with these cockamamie plans that he was going to retire and I was going to pay him out. And it was just, my mom would sit there and go, "What are you talking about?" It was just foolishness. And my life got very convoluted. But I I was always, so that's the blame I'll put on him, and that's a long, long story, which we'll hopefully talk about in other podcasts. But
Yeah.
my blame is I was always in a hurry. There's an old
Right.
Alabama song, "I'm in a hurry to get things done, I rush and rush," and I don't know why.
Hmm.
Um, like, I felt like, you know, I was in love with my girlfriend. I wanted to get married even before she was pregnant. And then she got pregnant. I was like, okay, well, you're pregnant. Okay, well, now we're going to have another kid. I'm going to work with my dad. And, by the time I was 25, I'd led more of a life than most people have done by the time they're 45.
Right.
And I see my children now. I'm house sitting this week, and my younger children are in Paris in England having the
Mhm.
time of their lives.
Right.
And I'm jealous of them. I'm happy for them, of course, but
Hmm.
jealous. Like, I've never been to Europe. I know you were born in Europe, but I've
Yeah.
never been there. I've always wanted to go, but I was kind of busy being a dad and trying to figure out who I was. And I really struggled with this podcast this week because I've thought about this a lot, not just this week. I've thought about this for years. Is
Hmm.
I really don't have an identity. I don't know. I really, Chris, I mean this. I don't know who I am. I don't know who I was supposed to be. I don't know who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Um, I knew I had to take care of my family, love my family.
Mhm.
But I had a lot of pressure what my dad wanted, what what I had to do for my family, what other people wanted. Once I started working for companies, and as an agent, I worked for all kinds of different companies, and I was always trying to please everybody. And I had so people would say, "Oh, you haven't got a direct boss." I said, "No, I've got 100 bosses or 1,000 bosses. Every retail person, you know."
Mhm.
And I and then I was driving my Harley, which I enjoy, but I was trying to be like my dad, and I just woke up one day and I just realized like I have no idea who the fuck I am. I have no idea. No idea. And I to this day
Yeah.
I don't. I really don't.
Um, yeah, I'll just touch on that in a second because I think from the outside looking in, maybe it's different, you know, how you see yourself versus how the rest of the world sees you. But I think going back to parents and you know ambitions, I think one of the things that when you're you know when you're sort of given the things that you ask for, it creates it creates an environment where you're not very ambitious. I
Agreed.
think you know I just kind of coasted along, you know, for a while until I had to kind of make it on my own. But even then, I always knew that I had a bit of a failsafe with my parents that if I needed something, they would probably give it to me. Like, you know, was I spoiled? Probably. I think I was. I was the oldest in the family, so I was the firstborn. You know, I think that I probably was given more than, say, my sister was or my brother. By the time it got to them, maybe my parents had kind of changed their philosophies on that. But I kind of always had this feeling of a security blanket, and it took a long time for me to kind of let go of that blanket. And there's a certain you know, there's a certain it's just it can hold you back. Like when you really don't have to make it on your own, it's you're kind of like you know, it's like leaving the nest. Like you know, I always just felt like I could just go back to the nest.
Right.
And I think for me, you know, I had some resentments about that when I looked at them really like in the last few years. I had resentments towards my parents for that. I think that, you know, when a parent kind of really parents instead of kind of just really takes care of what they're doing, what they should be doing is really guiding their kids to get out on their own, to figure out who they are and to make their own way in the world. And I'm not saying I didn't do that, but for a long time, I think I lived under the blanket of my dad. My dad was a powerful guy. He was tall. He had a charisma to him. He was in sales, of course, like your dad was.
Yep.
So I kind of followed suit, right? I followed along in his footsteps for a while, in his shadow in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, when
Shadow.
we bought the business. Yeah, he was my boss. We talked about this. He was my boss. I was my brother's boss, and there was a certain dynamic to that that was okay. I started to have my own freedoms and my own decision making, but it was always under this like, well, as long as my dad's okay with it, it's okay. If he disagrees, he's just going to veto whatever I'm doing. And yeah, you know, you can't change your past, of course. Yeah, I would have probably done things differently if I had have been, you know, if I had kind of more of that just incentive, like to be driven. I feel like I've never really been overly driven. I've gotten
I
the job done. I have. I've worked hard in
yes.
my life. I take great pride in working hard. I do, but it's really again only in the last few years that I've kind of made decisions to really change the course of my life. I mean, I made a significant one when I quit Kingsdown. That was for me, that was a big deal. You know, I mean, I'm working with a good friend of mine who I've known most of my life, and now I got to tell him I'm quitting. That was hard, man. Yeah, he knew it was coming. I mean, he could tell. I was half-assing it. Nobody, you know, you're often the last one to know that you're half-assing it because everybody else pretty much knows, right?
Right.
I hated it at the end. I hated all the bureaucracy, all the changes that were going on. I just, you know, I think one of the things that can cause change and maybe you know can help with defining goals or changing goals, changing the course of your life is when you get into a place that you really don't want to be in anymore. And though it's unfortunate that it's kind of becomes like it's almost catastrophizing it. Like you have to get to this really bad place before you can like change. And so I set a goal of taking a landscaping design course. I did that. I completed the course. I knew a lot of aspects of that already, but I was very it was a big goal. It was I mean it wasn't a big goal, but it was a goal that I was happy to complete and change the course of my career, which as you said, you do that a few times in your life. But just going back to you not knowing who you are, I mean, there are always things that just kind of define who you are because of the things that you've done in your life. And I think anybody on the outside looking in would say Sean is he's a solid human being. He works hard. He's a salesman. He is a family man. He's a husband. So, I think maybe when you're talking about, not knowing who you are, maybe it has to do with your career, or I don't know. I mean, you have talked recently, of course, about getting into, the sort of the field of, I guess, therapy,
Yeah.
or so I can tell that is a dream, I think, but maybe a goal. I mean, I think you've talked about kind of moving towards that. I know that you're setting up your meeting is coming up soon, and that you are, these are little goals that you're setting for yourself to kind of hopefully as a stepping stone towards kind of maybe moving in a different direction in your life.
I think so. I hope so. I yeah, like I feel I think as you know, I live with so much guilt, and I always I'm not saying I wasn't a good husband, but I always feel bad for my wife because she married a child. Like I was a child, and I
Yeah.
was I was a little spoiled. I was way too influenced by my parents. I put way too much attention on my parents, and
Hmm.
that all blew up in my face. I mean, who my parents were, not who I thought they were.
Yeah.
My dad kind of betrayed us all. My mom left us, and I used to feel that security kind of like, well, I always had my parents, and then all of a sudden I didn't.
Yeah.
My mom is gone.
Yeah.
My dad went and
Yeah.
started another family. He's
Yeah.
got five little girls. I mean, I more chance I'd have to take care of him than him take care of me. And
Yeah.
I've just been responsible a long time for a lot of people, and that's okay. Okay? And I
Yeah.
and I, I felt like I did push my kids to. They both went to university, and they're both doing very well. I'm not sure they give
Sure.
me any credit for that. I think they did it completely on their own. I think they should
Yeah.
give their mom a little more credit, but that
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I'm just happy they're happy.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm just gonna just so I don't get on too far down a rabbit hole. I want
Yeah.
to just touch on what you just said because one of the goals I have set since COVID was
Hmm.
getting Life Ring going again in Moncton. I
Excellent.
started Life Ring a few years ago in Moncton. It's for addiction. It's for all kinds of addiction. It's kind of an option to the AAGANA programs, which are fantastic programs. I think a lot of those
Yeah.
programs, but
Yeah.
it's a it's a non-secular program, and it just says there's a little more crosstalk. It's a little different way of doing things,
Yeah.
but I had um, tremendous success, and I was helping some real therapists at the mental health addiction center. I was going to the rehab. I won a Community Star Award for it. I was really proud of it. But then COVID shut it down, and my health shut it down. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about restarting it for a while, but I've been scared. I'm not sure I have it in me anymore. I'm not the man I was back then, but I finally decided to go ahead. So
Yeah.
I'm starting June 4th at 6 p.m. in room 176. So
Awesome.
um
That's great.
and I've gotten some people already excited about it. So I am scared, but I'm also excited. Um
Hmm.
and I think I need it in my life. I
Yeah.
my my life and my wife's life has been, I won't say ruined, but addiction has done a real number on us, and it's
Of
all
course.
my addiction. She doesn't have
Yeah.
any addictions.
Yeah.
Maybe she's addicted to me. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's a bad one. That's a bad one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and so I'm very happy. That's a goal I set that looks like I'm gonna achieve it.
Yeah.
Um, I've had some help with, you know, the government people helping me set up a room and a space, and they're helping me advertise it. So, you know, you don't get anything without a little bit of help for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but the last thing, and I'm gonna let you talk. I was thinking about what we were talking about though, about a little bit being spoiled. And what happened
Mhm.
to me is I never had any respect for money.
Mm.
My dad never had any respect for money.
Mhm.
He would make tons of money, he'd spend it all. And then he
Yeah.
wouldn't have any, and we wouldn't have
Yeah.
any. And he'd make
Yeah.
tons and he'd spend it all. And
Yeah.
and when you work in our job as agents, like you
Mhm.
can have a month where you make $15,000. The next month you made $20. You know, like it's so up and down.
Yeah.
And a normal smart human being would budget that and say, okay, here's my yearly income, and here's how I have to live.
Yeah.
Not go buy a new Harley, not go trade trucks, not take the kids to a NASCAR race. But you know,
Yeah.
I was just like my dad. It was, and I made good money for not that long. It was actually just a few years, couple that I
Yeah.
made good money on my own. But
Mhm.
I thought it would last forever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my mental health took away part of it. My addiction took away a lot of it. And
Yeah.
then just the world took away. I lost the line because they went online, and you know,
Yeah.
it's a big part of my income. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I've struggled with bankruptcies. We're still struggling. And I'm trapped once again. I'm always trapped. I'm trapped
Yeah.
by debts. And anyway, that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we have a lot of things in common. I think my dad always, he was the same. He spend money. He would buy drinks. He would do this. He would do
Yes.
that. He would, you know, he was constantly like, you know, he was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul at times in his life, and he stressed about money like most of his life. It was just like he was constantly under stress, and at times he made good money. We lived in a big house. You know, we went on vacations. We did all these things, but it gets passed along. You know, it gets passed along, and there have certainly been times in my life where I had good security with my income. It was consistent when we owned the business. You know, I paid myself a salary, and it got bigger and bigger every year. Um, and but you know, and I put money away. I did. We bought houses. We did the things that we've done, and you did too, of course. And we went on vacations, and we did things. But I kind of had this like I didn't really care about the future that much. It was kind of like I lived a lot in the present. I like just, you know, if I wanted something, I bought it. I didn't, yeah, budgeting, man, I've just been terrible at that my whole life. My whole life. Like putting money away for retirement and investments, like just like I did some of it, but really not the way you're supposed to. You know, my brother-in-law, his parents, they taught him like you put away 25 cents of every dollar you make. And
Wow.
I thought, what? Like, never. I've never done that. I mean, it's a great rule. And his parents taught him that, and he does it. Like my parents just not. There was nothing there. And I don't, what are you gonna do? Like I'm not blaming them, honestly. Like I'm not gonna go back in time and say they should have done a better job. But my my parents, honestly, they were like kind of kids too. Like they my mom, you know, she's a wonderful, beautiful woman, but she just like she really didn't teach me like values. Like she didn't. We talked about one of the shows where she taught me that lying was okay. My dad,
Mhm.
he led by example, but the examples that he led with weren't great. And the bottom line is, I'm a lot like him. And sometimes, like you know, you grow up, you look at your parents, and you're like, yeah, you know, I want to be like my dad. Until you don't, and then you realize like all
Right.
these things that they're not doing right, and you're like, okay, no, I'm not going to be like my dad. I'm not. But yet, there are definitely lots of characteristics that I have that are just like my dad, and I'm not gonna lie, like my dad's not here to hear me say this, but when my dad passed away, there was a certain amount of relief. I gotta be honest, like he was a stressful person. He was a stressful person to be around. I mean, we golfed together for years and years and years. I loved him. I loved golfing with him, but he was stressful even on the golf course. Like
Right.
he had this stress about him. And you know, you said about Shonda marrying a kid. I think as men, we have certain traits, certain aspects to us that we want to provide. We want to provide security for the people around us. We want to be a good example. We want to be a good dad. We want to be a good friend to our friends. We want to be a good partner to our wives. And a lot of men, including myself, it takes a long time to grow up somehow. It does. Like you kind of you get busy doing, you're just doing, but you're not really being, like, you're not identifying who you are really, like you're not really delving into what it is that really makes you tick as a career. Probably you don't. I think a lot of men struggle, and this is why we're doing this podcast. Like, a lot of men struggle with their emotions. It's really, I think, as far as like my emotional age, like, versus my physical age, I think about that sometimes. Like, I often think my emotional age, I could easily be like in my 20s. Like, honestly, like, I'm 55. I've been addressing it more lately. It's just been a slow process. I've been doing therapy. Getting sober, of course, was a huge part of becoming more emotionally strong. I'm more honest now. I I am more emotional now. I think for a while I was on like emotional autopilot. I really just, like, I didn't cry, I didn't do, stiff upper lip British, all that stuff. It's bullshit. It's fucking bullshit until you get right down to it and you start really addressing the things that we're talking about, the resentments that we have for our parents, the things that we didn't learn. But at some point you got to say to yourself, and this is a Tracyism, I'm a big boy now. Like, I'm 55 fucking years old, and I have to do the work. I have to address these things. And we're talking about goals here today. My goals now are daily. They're daily goals, and they're simple things, but they're things that they make me a better person every day. That, praying, meditating, eating well, exercising, talking to people, being open, being honest, communication, talking to you, doing a podcast. These are the goals, the daily things that I set for myself now, that I think I live, like we've talked about this. I really don't live in the past anymore. I don't live in the future. I live in the now. I really do. And I think that is a huge, huge light bulb for me, to live like that now, to not have the fear. Because we talk, I think you had fear on for the topic, and honestly, I nixed that one because I couldn't, I wouldn't have been able to come up with a podcast for that. Like, of course I could talk about fears that I've had, but to me, they're in the past now. They're not daily fears. I'm not even scared of dying anymore, to be honest with you. If I die today, Sean, I mean, I know that your podcast won't be as good, of course, without me. But man, I've had a great life, and I have no complaints anymore. I don't. I really don't. I know I'm complaining a little bit about my parents, but
No,
that's
no,
just,
that's what
we're
we're
just
talking
talking about
about.
it.
But
So I'm going
um,
on here a bit, but
I'm not scared of dying. I
mm,
unfortunately sometimes hope for it,
yeah,
not
no, you
would.
do, but that's,
But
yeah,
I said fear because I do live in fear. I
no,
was thinking about
no,
what we talk about. I've been in survival mode my whole life. Survival mode. I just
yeah,
been. I was
but
brought
you
up by
survived at
my
least.
parents weren't just acting like kids. My parents were kids. They had
Yeah,
me when they were 18, and my sister was only 2 years old. Man,
right.
they were kids.
They were kids
My
for
mom
sure.
got pregnant when she was 15, and
Yeah,
but they're your parents, so you look up to them. And I did want to be like my dad. I got in this business, and my dad was a legend. Everyone was
yeah,
like, oh, your father, oh, your father, your father. Everyone loved
yeah,
him. Like, I just
yeah,
watched women love him, men loved him, and respected him. And I thought,
yeah,
and even though dad wasn't that great of worker, he was a good salesman, and he had charm up the yin yang.
yeah,
His charm gave him a career, but his charm cost him his family,
yeah.
because he couldn't turn it off. He cheated on my mom, and death of a salesman, that was my life.
Yeah.
I thought my
William
dad
Loman.
was a fucking hero,
Yeah.
and then he wasn't. And I don't know where you get the audacity to be a really infidelity man, and then bring your son into that life where
Yeah.
everybody knows it, and bring me in
Yeah.
rooms with women you have cheated with my mother, and bring them into my life. And that's a lot to throw on a kid when he finds out.
Yeah.
And I remember Al Taylor, who I consider a good friend. I remember one time he said something like, "Oh, well, you know, your dad, he this," and someone said this. And I'm looking at these people like, you guys are out of your fucking mind. This is
Yeah.
my father and my mother.
Yeah.
Like, it cost my mother her life.
Yeah.
And you guys talk about it like it's just like, not. You made a fool out of my mom. He made a fool out of her. He took her whole life and made it a joke.
Yeah.
And I've been faithful to my wife for 35 years. I would never. We made a deal, and I know it's not. Fuck, I'm not on a high horse, but we told each other forever. And I was a jealous man growing up. I was.
Mhm.
I had a very hot young wife, but we always said to each other we would never cheat on each other. If we wanted
Yeah.
to leave, we would tell the person we were leaving, and we would leave. But no bullshit. And my wife had to live with the fact that she knew my father was a cheater, and I was out there hanging around, and my whole industry was like that.
Yeah.
I'm not, no, I'm not saying people close to me. I'm not insinuating anything, but it's just. Dad used to travel with salesmen. They all traveled every night to the same city. I mean, I'm talking about when I was a young man, Four Kings down, and
Yeah.
it was just a culture.
Yeah.
But
Such a boys club. Yeah.
right, but
Yeah.
there was a family at home, and I
Yeah.
watched my mom just cook dinner after dinner, and Dad just not show up. And when he did show up, he was drunk,
Yeah.
and his mom didn't like animals, and he'd show up with 3 dogs and cats, and then he would go away and leave her in charge of them, and she didn't want to be in charge with them. And
Yeah.
anyway, I'm getting off track. But so just to stick on track to this, because I know we can talk about other things. I do still live in fear, unfortunately. I know you see cars, they have these stickers on them that say "No fear." You ever see those?
Yeah.
No
Of
fear.
course. Yeah.
I wanted to start a company that says "Scared shitless" and put them on.
Right.
They'll sell stickers.
Tons of fear.
Yeah, that's me, man. Scared shitless. But so along those goals, because I know we can't talk all day, I tried to put on my biggest goal. My biggest goal, like I've got in there, you know, I want to get a Harley again someday. It'll probably have to be a trike because of my feet, but
Right.
still, weight loss. I've lost 140 pounds, but
Amazing.
I have a goal to just once in my life, and I've seen you do it. I'm always jealous. I want to go to the beach with no shirt on, just once.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sick of swimming in a t-shirt. I'm so sick of being embarrassed. I think
Yeah.
because I was so big, I'm going to need surgery, because I
Mhm.
got too much loose skin.
Mhm.
But anyway, I hopefully maybe one day I can afford that so I can feel like a normal person. I
Mhm.
want to be addiction free. That's a big goal of mine. But all this leads up to one thing that I've always put in one. This is my goal.
Yeah.
Been this way for a long time.
Yeah.
Peace of mind.
Yeah.
I want to wake up one morning and not feel like my whole world is crashing down around me. That the IRS isn't calling. That
Yeah.
I'm screwing up my kid's life. That I'm not pleasing Kingsdown, or there's some customer not happy, or
Yeah.
I've let down a friend, or I feel terrible. Like my health is so bad. And I know you've been taking care of yourself. I've been doing better, but I still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I just want to wake up one day before I die, and just my eyes open, and not within 30 seconds be scared shitless. Just
Honestly,
peace of mind.
and you've told me that before. You can get it, of course you can, but it is a process. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take time. It's going to take therapy. It's going to take, it's going to take treating yourself right, doing the next right thing. But um, it's interesting because I think when we're younger, not for everybody, but of course, when we're younger, goals are often material possessions. And I think the older you get, the more you realize all that stuff is just shit. It doesn't matter. Of course, you want a house and you want your house to be nice, and it's nice to drive a nice car. And these are all things that can be goals. But to say that peace of mind is your goal, man, that if anyone can take anything away from this podcast today, man, that's a brilliant statement, and it's a brilliant philosophy to want that. Like that's what life is all about, man. That is the
That's all we
goal.
want.
Like that is like when I read about Buddhism and these different practices, it's about enlightenment. It's about getting to a place where you're enlightened. And enlightenment by definition is you feel light. You don't feel heavy anymore. You're just light. You're just like you've got a halo on your forehead and you're floating around like the world is your oyster. You look outside the window, you see miracles outside, you see birds, you hear birds chirping, you say hi to people. You just like life is light. And that is like that is a one like what a goal. What a goal. Like I'm just I love that, man. Peace of mind is the goal that everyone on the planet should have, because if we all had peace of mind, man, the world would be a beautiful, miraculous, loving place.
I want to know what it feels like. I mean that. Anyway, I said it already. I'm tired of being scared, but you know, my wife and I are in a funny spot because we were parents at 19, and all we had, whether we wanted to, but whether we wanted to or not, we had to take care of our children,
Yeah,
and
of course.
we did.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always the best, wasn't always the greatest, but we did. And
Mhm.
Shonda, she should have been mother of the millennium. And I'm
Yeah.
not just saying that, unbelievable. Um, but what happens is you just said you're 55, I'm 54. How did that happen?
Yeah.
And now I'm 54. I'm sitting in my son's house. He's
Yeah.
in Paris with his wife. My
Yeah.
other son is doing yard work in the home he just bought with his wife down in Halifax.
Yeah.
And they're grown up
Yeah.
and in their 30s. And we're not parents anymore. So all we were parents. We were parents. We were parents. We were
Sure.
parents.
For sure.
And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, of course, we're still parents. I'm still helping out. But
Yeah.
my everyday life, who am I? What am I? Like,
Mhm.
talk about empty nest syndrome. I didn't know that was such a real thing, but it has hit us like a truck, and we have not been able to recover from it. And I think
Yeah.
something that Shonda and I have to work on, besides all my demons and problems, is I think we have to get on the same page. I think
Yeah.
we're not on the same page, and I think she knows that. I'm not. I obviously wouldn't say that, but it wasn't comfortable with her hearing it. But
Sure.
we're on the same page about a lot of stuff. We love
Yeah.
each other, which conquers a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't conquer all. That old saying, it doesn't
Yeah.
conquer all. It
No.
conquers a lot.
No. Yeah. Being in a partnership, being in a relationship for as long as you have, I mean, communication is obviously essential. You know, for a while, I know both of us, we were living our most honest life. There's no question about it. Today, I do that, but there's always, people have different ideas. Like it's trying to find that middle ground where you're both happy with your decisions and
Right.
yeah, I mean being a parent, you're just that's your number one priority. It's all you're doing, like you're just making sure your kids are okay, and then once they are okay, yeah, you find yourself in a place where maybe you're like, okay, now what, right?
Hmm.
But you know like you said, times change, careers change, these things I know that you're thinking a lot about helping others, and I think that is clearly something. For me, I know if I'm thinking about something over and over and over again, I know it's something that I need to do. There's a reason, of course. um and I think, when you talk about peace of mind, just going back to that, I mean, I can't. I know that we talked about recommending books or different things. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, is a book that I think everyone on the planet should read, because you don't have to find peace of mind for later today. You just have to find peace of mind right now, like right in this moment, to just have just get rid of all the stuff that you're thinking about, all the, the bills and all the shit, like all the other stuff that everybody has to deal with. Eventually that stuff just goes away anyway. I mean, when you die, it's all gone anyway. It doesn't really matter. It's just we're all just like a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. When you look at the universe, like what does it really matter, any of that shit, right? Peace of mind comes from just being happy with who you are in this moment right now. Like I'm good with who I am. I think you're good with who you are in this moment right now. When you just think about what it is that you're doing, what you're talking about, who you are, who you've become, all the great things that you've done, you know, focusing on the negative stuff, it just doesn't, it's not going to serve you anymore. And then I know you know that. It becomes like, it's a mantra. It's just, for me now, it's a mantra to just be happy to be who I am in the now. You know, I've done the best I could. We talk about our parents, they did the best they could. At the end of the day, you know, could they have been different? Sure. You know, you were talking about your dad, and I felt the same way at times. People were like, oh man, your dad's so smart and he's all this and he's all that. And I'd feel like saying, yeah, but you don't live with him. You don't live with him. You're not at home when he comes home, same as your dad. When he comes home half drunk and starts having an argument with my mom at the table and then lights up a cigarette while we're all having dinner. You don't live in that. I do. So yeah, you don't know shit until you walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. You just don't, right? We all have traumas. We all have shit, but dealing with them is the biggest thing. That's the only way that you get peace of mind. It's the
Yeah.
only way.
I've got to get back. I was doing therapy and it was helping.
Yeah.
I took a hit in my income and I had to cancel it, but I got to figure
Yeah.
a way to get it back.
I know
important.
it's huge.
But yeah, it's funny you saying that. Like I remember all my cousins were Uncle Bobby, Uncle Bob. You're so lucky. Your Uncle Bobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good uncle.
Yeah.
And all my friends, oh, you're so lucky, you're so lucky. And I just remember I started listening to them and I go, yeah, I guess I'm lucky. I don't know. I don't feel so lucky sometimes, but I'm glad you said what you said. I know we're probably should be wrapping up. I never know how long this is. It probably says somewhere, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I did want to add a recommendation. So every week I thought maybe you and I could recommend something. It sounds like you already did, but I'd like you to repeat it because I think it's an important one.
Yeah. Eckhart Tolle. He's a spiritual advisor. Basically, he went through a midlife crisis. He basically gave up everything he had. He got to the point where he was kind of talking to himself in the third person, and he hated who he was so much that he knew he couldn't even go forward anymore. He had to completely change who he was. He ends up writing several books. He's a best-selling author, you know, #1 New York Times, years. He's been on Oprah Winfrey. Like, he is world renowned. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. It's all about just living in the now, getting rid of the past, forget the future. There's the saying in AA, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is the present. That's why they call it a gift. It's just what, man, it's so true. It is so true. So Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, wonderful, wonderful book. It's well written. It's a slightly complex concept, I guess, but he writes it in a way where people are like asking him questions within the book and then he answers the questions. It's a game changer. It's 100%.
Well, that's awesome. I hope people check it out.
Me too.
Mine is a letter from a Penthouse Forum back in no, you know what? Most people won't even know what that is anymore. So
no, it's true. No,
mine's not quite as deep, but it's I was going to recommend a couple books, and I'll do that on future episodes. Mine's actually a television show on Netflix called Dope Sick.
Okay.
I believe it's on Netflix. I should have checked that. But anyway, if you search Dope Sick, you will find it. It stars Michael Keaton.
DOP.
A lot of good people.
Dope Sick. Yeah.
Dope Sick. Yeah. And it's all about the opiate crisis in North America. This one's technically America, but Canada was the same thing. Sure. It's about the Sackler family, the lies they told, the lives they've ruined, millions dead, millions affected. I'm being one of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had their names on museums and universities and buildings while people were dying. Anyway, they lost. Their names got taken off the buildings. Their respect got taken away. They were fined $10 billion, but they made $20 billion. Right. So they still walked away with $10 billion. Right. Well, my life has been totally ruined by them. And I am probably one of the luckier ones.
Yeah.
So this is a very good depiction of it. It shows it from a lot of different angles. Michael Keaton plays a doctor, and there's a twist I won't say. But anyway, if anyone gets a chance to watch it, Dope Sick is fantastic. My wife watched it with me, but struggled because she connected from the other side a little too much and made her
Sure.
cry a couple times and upset
Yeah.
her. But
Yeah.
anyway, very good show. So
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great. Again, I can't help but say, when you say your life was ruined, I think your life has been transformed because you've kicked your addiction. So, I mean, I love you,
yeah,
man, but
transformed maybe is a good
your
word.
life
Yeah.
your life was hard and difficult for many years because of your addiction, but it's so much better now that you're sober, man. Like, you
Yeah.
kicked it, and that is, man, that's a goal that a lot of people have, and you've done it. So that you should be so proud of yourself, man. And
Yeah,
you know,
and
just if
coming
I'm,
from you, that means a lot, man, because you kicked one too, and
I
I
did, and
trust your opinion.
it's a game changer. It's a game changer, and it's a lot of people's goal to not be addicted to a substance. There's no question about it. People do it. They continue to do it. They're hiding
I
under
still
a bed.
do it. I'm still dealing with all kinds of addictions. I still vape. I still drink coffee.
Yeah.
I've had gambling, drugs. The only one with me was booze because booze didn't agree with me, and I think because my dad was an alcoholic, I've never had an
Yeah.
alcohol problem. But
Yeah.
I heard something the other day. They said if you're not if you don't have an addiction before the age of 25, you probably never will.
No,
And
that's-
that describes my wife to a T. She'd never had one.
yeah.
And I started smoking when I was 15 years old and started having a Coke every morning. You know, I was blah blah blah. Blah. Just that's all if I see something once, I'm an addict. If I try it once, I'm an addict. It's not an
Yeah.
excuse. It's just
I mean, everything I read about addiction, again, it generally speaking goes back to trauma from your childhood. Those are the reasons people get addicted. They do. They're looking for an escape. They're looking for a way out. They're looking for a way to not deal with the things that they've, but nobody gets out alive, as they say. We all have trauma. Like, it's how you address it. If we're getting close to the end here, my goals today, I've often had goals around travel. I like to travel. I like to look forward to going on a trip. I really do. When I start planning it and it starts getting into motion, I really get excited about that. I am planning a trip out east this summer, so we will be doing a podcast in your
together.
house.
That would be awesome.
I've already started. I'm getting ready to book a couple things, so we will be doing that. That is a goal of mine. My goal, again, my goal is for today. My goal is to be sober today. My goal is to be a good person. My goal is to do my best for today, man. And that's all I can do. That's all I can do, man.
Yeah, it's a good goal.
Mhm.
I'll try to reflect the same. My
All
goal
right,
is just to get through another one, man, but that's okay.
one
And
day
you're
at a
right.
time.
Last thing I want to say is you said that when I'm on these podcasts, I'm happy, but I am.
Yeah, I
And
know you are.
I think that's connection. We need connection. Anyone that thinks I'm losing my voice, anyone that thinks you can do this on your own, you can't.
No chance. No
You can't
chance.
do it from the day we're born. You take
No.
a deer, they might be able to survive on their own as soon as they're born, or a turtle, but a fish, shark,
Yeah.
humans, if they don't have their mom and a community, they die.
Absolutely,
That's it.
man.
And
Absolutely.
that never changes. We are the same way our whole lives. I think if we don't have someone, we die in one way or the other. And
Connection is absolutely critical, but connection with people that you really respect, people that lift you up. We can be connected to people in our lives that really, like, they're not good for us. And I
yes,
know at
I've
times I
done
have
it.
connections with people that I liked, and whether they were drinking buddies or things, like, they just kind of perpetuated certain characteristics of myself. I mean, I'm trying again to build new relationships all the time. But connection with people that you love and respect, that lift you up, that's so important too, man. Like,
It is.
it's so
I
important.
I need it back. I have isolated myself for a few years, and
Yeah.
I've got to stop it. Of course, my job gets me out talking to people, but I'm talking about mattresses, and I like talking about mattresses. It's fine, but
Yeah.
it's not, you know what I mean? It's not real
I
connection. We
yeah.
actually get in trouble for doing that. We're told that don't go in the stores and just talk about nothing, talk about product, talk about, you know. All right, namaste.
Yeah. To me, I think that the connections that you're looking for are people that you can support, that you can help. And I'm super excited for you for this Life Ring group that's coming up next week, I guess.
Yeah, next
That
Tuesday.
sounds like that's something that's really lifting you up. And those are the things that, when you start to do them again, you realize how important they are. And so I think that's a wonderful goal. I think that you're getting there, and it's going to feel amazing when you start doing it. I think it might change your life, to be honest. I think that when I hear you talking over the last few years, getting into counseling, taking some courses, doing some things to move towards that, I think that would be very, very gratifying for you. And I feel like you would get a lot more peace of mind
I think so too.
in doing that. I know that you're helping I know you're helping people in your sales role. I know you do. Like you're a great salesman. You're good at what you do. You're convincing, you're honest, you're open. I know that you've helped thousands of people. You helped me at the beginning when we first met. We talk about that meeting at Mike's Cottage. I thought, man, this guy's awesome. Like he just knows what he's doing. He's a big guy. He's tall. He's smart. Like he's got charisma. And I know you don't think that about yourself, but I'm telling you, man, from the outside looking in, people see it. So
you keep saying it. Hopefully, I believe it one of these days. But I appreciate it.
I know you do.
I want the last goal I'm going to read.
Yeah,
it goes along with what you said.
Yeah,
was I have a goal of getting my reputation and my respect and some of that you were talking about. I feel like I've lost that or I've given it away, and I want to try to get some of that back. So we'll see. Like it's a lot. I realized as I was writing this stuff down, like, okay, just try to get through the day here. I got to work today. I got stuff to do. So
you know what? I'm a firm believer in if you believe in it, you'll do it. I really do. I think the world is a wonderful thing, and that we do know that if you set your mind to something, man, so many people have done so many incredible things.
Worse off than me, worse off than you.
The sky's the limit. Like we've made it this far. We've done great things in our lives. Surviving the world is a goal, for God's sakes. Like it's
absolutely.
So, a lot of people don't. And so here we are today. We're doing our podcast. We're making shit happen. You're spreading the good word, man. We're spreading the fact that peace of mind is something that we should all be striving for, brother. So
you're right. Well, thanks again, man. I really enjoyed this one. I always look forward to seeing you. So you have a great day.
It was a great one, man. It was kind of light, but it was fun. We had some laughs, and I think we there was a good message conveyed, and I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
All right, I love you, man.
I love you too, brother. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Peace of mind. See you, brother.
See ya.